Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. George is working through them so that we avoid duplication. And George, are you ready? Okay, here we go.
We'll start with the obvious. It came in from a lot of cards, but what effects would it have on your operations to have a constantly rising fee in carbon?
Sure. Obviously, it would first effect would be to increase the cost of power delivered, and it might change the economics of one power source versus another. Just not having more specific than that general term, but I think that would be an initial effect. And as I pointed out, there certainly are efforts underway to operate in a way that is reducing carbon output, particularly here in Arkansas. That means less coal-fired generation and more natural gas and renewable-fired generation. I think that's we're certainly seeing that happen currently.
No, I agree with John. I mean, I'm trying to lower members' bills right now through energy efficiency and so on and some other programs we have. And if you put a rising fee, of course, as people use less, their carbon output's going to be less. We're seeing those benefits anyway, but if you have a high number of low income and elderly people and you start increasing the fees, they're going to see it immediately. And it's not as easy for them to make the adjustment. I understand the goal. I'm not sure an ever-increasing fee on that is the way to go. We're doing the things we're doing totally voluntarily, and I found out that we benefit as well. The answer is to work together on those things.
Well, I'm sure you won't be surprised. I'm going to ditto these guys. I think really what you're going to see is I think you should let the market take hold. In other words, it's economic, and we all benefit economically by placing these resources in place when the cost gets to where it is. I mean, if you look at the map, Arkansas is on the very low end of current cost per kilowatt. The only reason why it hasn't been to the Midwest of Arkansas yet is because economics haven't worked, but now they are. One of the things I did not mention is my total cost over that 28-year period for the power out of that power plant is 2.5 cents. I cannot beat that. So economically, it's going to work without imposing any additional regulatory burden or financial burden. So that's my point.
It wasn't on this question, but part of our policy, what we're advocating for is you give all that revenue back to your customers. So that puts customers money in their pockets, so you guys can look at raising rates in order that they have the money to pay for those rates. And yet you've corrected for the externalities of that related to climate change and health concerns about burning coal. So with that dividend coming back, would that make it so that your policy could reduce emissions, but your customers would be protected? And do you ever think about having an internal price on carbon for your decision-making to start with?
We do use a carbon price estimate in our resource planning, obviously just looking at it because a lot of our resource planning decisions are long-term, and so we know that is possible. And so it is it's an input into our decision-making process. But I think, as John said, right now we're seeing just the market forces work to reduce carbon emissions without having to do anything. We don't have a stated position on the proposed legislation that's out there, but we do know that currently we're seeing a lot of advancement just through the cost of renewables coming down, the cost of natural gas coming down, and you're seeing coal plants such as ours are on schedule to be retired. and you're seeing other coal facilities that are being retired currently. So I think that's probably a trend that's going to continue over the next several years, but it is a longer term process.
We don't have an internal policy. Certainly something we need to look at. We're a distribution co-op, so we don't get to choose all the time what our generation supply is. Sometimes that gets done for us. I know our members feel the same way, that all these decisions get made for them. That's why we're trying to put more power in their hands to make their own decisions for if they wanted to do solar or if they want to do energy efficiency. It's frustrating. Fuel costs go up. Every individual doesn't get to choose what fuel they use. But solar is one way that they can do that.
You're looking at a utility that's got a total of 55 employees. Maybe 12 are on the electric side, and you're looking at the only guy who would do the calculations. So, no, it's not been part of the equation.
You can say that for sure.
Where you have a lot of success in moving to renewables, when you look at doing it at the speed that's being called for, like by the IPCC, where you're talking about a 40% reduction in 12 years and nearly net zero by mid-century, do you think without a price on carbon, do you see anything that will drive emissions down at that speed, with the options being a market-based policy like pricing carbon versus something more like the Clean Power Plan to, for more regulatory restrictions to move that price down?
Go ahead. Go in reverse order. Maybe he'll figure it out.
I'm just not a person who favors regulation in hardly any fashion. I think what the ultimate game changer is going to be is battery storage, energy storage. I think when that truly becomes economical, then you can add additional overcapacity for those resources and store it for those off-peak, non-generation times. And I think that is the game changer more than adding any more regulation or any more taxing, so to speak. And I'm confident that it's probably within the next 5 to 10 years at the max that the economics of battery storage is going to work.
No, I just wanted to say that since 2015, we've already reduced our capacity demands by about 25%. And that was all voluntary, and I think that we can get that much more in the next 3 years. Solar right now is the absolute lowest cost of any generation out there. It's cheaper than natural gas. Wind is probably cheaper.
They get hydro for a penny sometimes.
And hydro can be as well, but natural gas, coal, even nuclear is not as low cost as solar. And that's why you're starting to see solar be accepted in our area. It has to be affordable first.
And I think that, like John said, storage is going to be a driving force right now. Absent large-scale storage, you still need large generating facilities that are available to run all the time and that are there when they're called upon. And those, currently the most economic and probably for the next several years will be natural gas to provide large-scale generation. And you're going to need some large-scale generation to make the system work until you have large-scale storage. And that's just going to take time. And so I don't know, I'm still not convinced that one policy or another is the best. I don't know yet as far as which would be the best, but for some foreseeable period, you're going to have to manage the transition from where we've been to where we're going, and that's going to take several years to happen.
I might just kind of pass those questions over to our other people here. So, Frank, in terms of seeing a fast uptick in solar, do you see a price on carbon as a good way to speed that up?
We've been at this in Arkansas for like 18 years. We've been trying to bring renewable energy policy that is good for everyone. And we've been shut down. And I've always been a fan of incentives, a carrot approach instead of a stick. But it may be time to pull out the stick. And that would be a dividend approach.
And your thoughts on the impact on your community?
Well, I always defer to Frank for these type of answers, but I would say that from my perspective and from my community's perspective, we sometimes need to become the stick, because people power can change things as much as possible. So when policies fail us, when governments fail us, when corporations fail us, it's the responsibility of the people in democratic societies to begin to take ownership of the change. And if we continue to think that we are not co-creators in whatever solutions that happen, and we keep relying on others who are our so-called representatives to make the decisions on our behalf, we will stay trapped in this vicious cycle. It is a sign of incompetence if we can't come up with a solution without our input. Then it's need and it's time for you to seek our input, because you've proven that you can't make the resolutions by yourself without us. So that would be my response from people's perspective. And I would also say this, that if other people in the world are already doing it, it can be done.
We're going to jump around here just a little bit, okay? And so the question here is, do you think there is any future in building nuclear power plants in the U.S.?
I think the answer is yes, but not anytime soon. The technology's not there. We operate several nuclear power plants in the energy system. One of them is here in Arkansas. It's a great source of energy. As I mentioned, it's a big source of ours, and it's low cost. And we like it, and we're going to take care of it. We're going to operate it cleanly and safely. The challenge, though, is a nuclear plant under the technology that's available currently is way more expensive than any other option that's available. And so building a new nuclear power plant today is very capital intensive, very expensive, and it just doesn't make economic sense with the technology that exists. There is technology being developed to make nuclear power plants smaller and hopefully less capital intensive. And I think when that technology is perfected, demonstrated to be successful at a commercial scale, then you'll see some development, and I think that's still several years away, unfortunately, because nuclear power obviously is a clean, emissions-free source of generation that can run 24/7. And fortunately, here in Arkansas, we do get a substantial amount of our power from a nuclear power facility. But just the capital cost and the technology isn't there, and probably won't be there in the next several years. But hopefully, smart people will continue to work on that, and it'll improve over that time as well.
I have a follow-up.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. You can all answer. One of the questions that I have coming up with nuclear power often, like James Hansen, who's a well-known climate scientist, is about half the people in the room, it says it's the next generation of nuclear plants that burn the old fuel. Is really what we need to meet our goals. And is that a real technology that we're going to see? Is that kind of like fusion as far as 10 years out?
I am aware that there is active research in the field of using spent fuel and reprocessing it, and I think there has been some success doing that at the lab scale, but not yet at the commercial scale. And there are a lot of hurdles to deal with. One is the regulation of spent fuel that prohibits reprocessing. You'd have to overcome that, and then you'd need to get a facility built at scale to demonstrate that it's successful. And I think to do that, in all likelihood, it's going to require either a large research facility that has, or a military or government installation that has deep pockets and isn't worried about whether they're making a profit. And in order to spend the capital, get the project in place, and demonstrate that it works. And I think obviously the technology's there, and it has a lot of appeal on a lot of levels. It's just getting it demonstrated to be economic at commercial scale. That's still the question mark, and it hadn't happened yet.
I just want to say that if you have a carbon tax, you're going to push utilities to go to nuclear. And they're happy to do it. Utilities will get a guaranteed return on their investment. You're going to see immediate rate increases that most people do not want. But that if you have a carbon tax, you're going to push out the other carbon fuels. You don't have any other options.
My thought process is, who wants one in their backyard? Is it going to be politically acceptable? You live in Russellville, right? Okay. But I mean, still, even if it is clean and affordable, there's going to be the public perception that it's dangerous. And getting over that hump is a huge obstacle. It's a 10-year process to go through from the time you start permitting to the time you complete a traditional type nuclear plant. I mean, and all politics in between point A and point B, I don't really see it happening much in the United States going forward. That's just my opinion.
Well, one of my earlier slides showed that China installed the equivalent of 10 nuclear power plants in 3 months. Battery technology, there's stories, multiple stories every day, if you're paying attention, where battery storage is being put in place. The more we do it, the cheaper it's going to become, just like solar has. There's absolutely no reason for us to wait on any nuclear technology even to be built. And like, if you ask your neighbor, even with all the assurances of safety, it's going to be a hard sell.
We have a lot of students in the room today. Okay.
So,
So are we.
For other students, are we? So what advice would you have for a college student who's interested in working in the energy production and distribution industry?
Come join us, it's exciting. It's a great and exciting career field. I've been in this for more than 30 years, and I learn something new every day. You know, this is a great time to be in the utility industry space. There's a lot of change happening. We're having to learn a lot. It's thought-provoking, it's creative, and it's exciting. Get people that'll come out on a weekend and talk about it. I mean, that's pretty exciting stuff. But I would encourage young people, if you have an aptitude for math and science, I tell kids all the time, look at the engineering field. That gives you so many opportunities. You may not practice as an engineer, but you'll learn how to solve problems. You'll learn how to make solutions. You'll be exposed to really exciting things. I've got a daughter that's an engineer. I've got a son that's going to study to be one. I hang around with a lot of engineers, and it's pretty exciting. And that's what I would encourage young people to do, because that'll enable you to get into the field. And it'll enable you to do a lot of things that are exciting. So that would be my challenge to you as a student.
No, that's real good advice. Everything is getting more technical. Take all the STEM classes you can. Even our linemen now, every one of them has an iPad. They have to be able to understand the maps. They have to be able to understand the load, the feed. Everything is computerized. We're using drones to do staking and mapping. We're tying everything together with fiber optic. There's a whole world out there of metering that is now possible because of computers. This industry didn't change for about 80 years, but electronic and computerized metering has changed the business, and it's causing everyone to struggle right now how to adapt.
I ditto that with engineers. We're just starved for engineering and people with strong math skills. But John, I gotta admit, it's the first time I've heard that being with a bunch of engineers is exciting. So I must be not talking to the wrong one.
Yeah, I would just add that I think the government has been informing utilities for years now that the cyber security threat is pretty significant to the grid infrastructure, and so there's a major shortage of people in that field. So if you're in college and you want to have lots of job security, cybersecurity is one that I think will provide a lot of job security.
And I would say this from someone who comes from the field of the humanities, is that the humanities are suffering right now. We're at a critical point because they're defunding the humanities in most colleges and universities, which means that as far as the change that we're going to begin to see coming up in the next 50 to 100 years are going to require creative and critical minds. And what I mean by creative and critical minds, people who have cultivated their imagination to think outside of paradigms that exist. The STEMs are good, but even someone in STEM will tell you if they didn't have a creative mind and imagination that was cultivated before they entered the STEM field, they could not be able to rethink problems in such a way to begin to design new solutions to old problems. Einstein even had an artistic background. So imagination that comes through taking disciplines from the humanities and utilizing them to stretch yourself to think of a world that doesn't exist is going to be critical. Because a lot of times why we don't see change now is that people are trapped in old boxes. Yeah. And they can't think outside those boxes. And so what the humanities do, art, literature, philosophy, religion, English, I mean, all the disciplines of humanities, sociology, anthropology, those disciplines help you rethink humanity in such a way to advance us to another way of seeing the world that could not have been seen. So even if you go the STEM route, do not undermine the necessity of a humanities discipline to help guide you on as far as what the new world should be that we need to create together, okay?
Okay, Mayor, this is directed to you, but how do you envision the shift to ownership of the means of renewables energy product to poor people and people of color? How do you see that ownership coming about?
Well, it's going to come in stages. I think the first stage is making poor people and people of color aware that they have pretty much the control of the future of any industry that is coming online, whether it's renewable energy or any other energy that's coming online now. And then the reason I say that is because no corporation or no government will deny the fact that they extract their wealth off the backs of poor people. So when poor people began to demand that the same way a government official is a public servant, corporations are consumer servants. When the consumer and the citizen realize they're one person, then the people who supply them either policies as well as product now have to listen to what their demands are. That's the first step. Educating people to realize where their true power lies. Their power lies as being a citizen and a consumer, and they're one and the same. So anybody that provides them a product has to listen. This is why industries have customer service departments, right? Right? Consumer or customer service, right? So that's why we have policy departments, right? In the government, public services, right? So when you realize that your power begins there and you're part of a democratic country, then you can move to the next level of saying, what industries do we currently now have in play that's giving me hell every week or every day because of natural disasters or inability to find the job that I need to make a living wage, and now make those industries now part ownership, you part owner of those industries, so that you'll never be victim of not having access to those things again, okay? The third thing is to begin to elect people in office, governmental positions, that truly come from your vantage point, to see the world from where you see it, and not from a world which is foreign to them. And then you will begin to see the revolution happen that will not be televised.
Mark, I'm going to come back to you for maybe a follow-up on that. And with my thought being, having worked for the rural electric co-ops, they have an annual meeting where the membership, owns the co-op, and to get people there, they have to have free food. It's always a challenge to get people engaged. So I thought maybe you just might want to reflect on that.
Actually, I thought free food was a policy that co-ops. No, co-ops, I think, exemplify what he's saying is we are owned by the members that are part of the co-op. And they elect a board. And we have a 9-member board of directors. There's 3 of them come up for election every year. If you want to run for our board, it says go out and get 15 signatures. And you're able to run for the board. It's one of the reasons we offer the programs we offer is we try to be very member-centric and very member-aware of what our members want. We've injected solar into this discussion. I think a lot of people in South Arkansas, they didn't know they were interested in solar until they actually got to see the benefits. And I'll quote Henry Ford on that. They asked him why he thought everybody would want automobiles. And he said, well, they didn't know. He said, they would want faster horses. But they had never seen automobiles. But I think the solar works that way. But we are owned by our members, and we are directly responsive to them.
John, you mentioned a little bit, I believe, but the role that batteries play in the future and how fast that comes on. That relates also, I believe, a little bit to the electric car industry coming on pretty strong, forecasting that pretty fast. There's a lot of batteries out there in the electric cars. So in thinking in terms of balancing these loads in the future between wind and solar and less gas because it's a fossil fuel, what role do you see electric cars playing in being a problem for the co-ops? Are they a good load for the electric utilities? Are they a helpful load? Are they part of the solution not only to cheap transportation but to providing low-cost electricity?
And I think as the metering technology improves, where we'll be able, and the communications technology improves, where we'll be able to maybe dispatch and draw upon those electric vehicles when they are plugged in, to where they can maybe both take and deliver power. I think there's potential there. I think right now they are probably a useful load to the extent that they are an off-peak load if they're being charged overnight. That obviously is consuming power at a time when the load's low, when demand's low, and when ultimately if you move to time of use pricing, when prices may very well be lower too, and they may be able to take advantage of that in the future as metering technology improves. And metering technology is improving very fast. We're in the process of installing advanced meters throughout our service territory over the next 3 years, and we're actively into that process. I know several of the distribution co-ops already have advanced metering out into their service territory, and we'll be able to offer new services to our customers, such as possibly being able to take advantage of their on-site generation better, take advantage of their automobiles. And so I think it's a technological issue. I think right now you probably can't take advantage of electric vehicles as a resource, but probably will be able to going forward.
I just want to add one comment to that. In Japan,
an island nation, all of the electric cars that are sold in Japan have a bi-directional plug wired to them. In the United States, none of the electric cars have a bi-directional plug.
Is that because of policy?
It's because of the people in control of what gets released. It's doable. We should all be driving electric cars 10 years ago, but there are distinct reasons why we're not. So those people making the decisions for all of us, and we in this room are all of a sudden now, we are paying attention, and that is exactly what it's going to take. So you take, island dwellers always figure things out before mainlanders. And in Japan, it's sad that every electric car has a bidirectional plug and not a single one in the US does. You can hack your car and make it bidirectional, but you just void the warranty. So that's a very simple fix.
Now I can't remember who said this. I think it was you, John. But you got industries, Google, Apple, wanting to locate places where they want to be carbon neutral. They're getting that pressure from their customers, and so in the Midwest, generally, this region, we have a lot of coal power, and is that a economic development disadvantage for us to have that high carbon intensity in our power systems? And how much of the pressure is coming from that, and how much is coming from other places to move quickly to renewables?
And I think a big, and I mentioned it earlier, Arkansas has very low electric rates relative to other states in the nation, and that is an economic development tool. It's obviously attractive to energy-intensive industries, and we have a lot of energy-intensive industries, and that helps. It also is attractive to non-energy intensive industries because that is a component that's helpful. Everybody benefits from that. But many corporations have sustainability goals, and so and we realize that Arkansas missed out on some economic development projects several years ago because we did not have the ability to meet corporations' demands for renewable resources. We can do that now. We have renewable resources on our system. Other utilities have renewable resources on their system, and we're able to meet those demands, and we are actively working to position the state to be able to meet those goals. When the governor spoke at the dedication of the Stuttgart solar facility, he mentioned that from an economic development standpoint, bringing renewables into the mix is critical to Arkansas's economic development future. So we are doing that. But we also are mindful that we want to take steps in a way that doesn't unnecessarily move our position as a low-cost energy state to being a high-cost energy state, because that would limit our opportunities as well. So we want to balance that, but it is important. It's something we're sensitive to because our customers are sensitive to it, and we want to be able to do that. And through our green tariff that I described to you earlier, that's a step we're taking to be able to address customers' needs and say, I want something that's dedicated to me. What can you do? That's one step. We're also looking at other steps as we continue to add renewables into our mix, how to use those in a way to directly meet some of our customers' demands. And so we're actively studying that. I don't have all the answers yet, but we've got real smart people that are working on that. And once they get it, I'll be able to tell you about that as well. But like I said, it's an exciting time to be in the field. Anybody else has something to say?
I would just say, I stated previously, we were able to turn around really quickly when our largest customer said that they had some renewable energy goals. And we now have renewable energy goals as well. And bring any new industries to South Arkansas that want to be 100% renewable, we're ready for them.
And we're the same way. I mean, having that relationship with the Power Agency in Oklahoma gives me a chance to already do a 100% sustainable portfolio for a particular customer. Maybe sound like a broken record here, but Walmart's got a gigaton reduction program. They want to increase their sustainability, but I can guarantee you they're not willing to pay one fraction of a penny more for it along the way. And really some of the other big ones are like that too. So I mean, we're all trying, I think, to move that direction. I think I can. I've got more flexibility than a lot of utilities to do it, but that customer is still looking for low rates too.
Yeah, I would just like to comment that based on our current generation in Arkansas, the full cost of that generation on our health and welfare is not reflected in our electric bills. It's reflected in our health insurance costs, and whether it's in property insurance costs. And so it's fine to have low electric bills, but it's more important to have a healthy society. And it's way past time. Those environmental costs, those healthcare costs, those insurance costs are routinely dismissed by the electric utilities. And it's past time that we recognize those and make sure everybody is fully aware of it.
And I would just add to that we forget that the reason that corporations cannot be the leader in the moral consciousness of this country or the world is because their first priority is their bottom line and their responsibility to their stakeholders. So if there's a conflict between the negative impact of their decisions on the people and the ability to make profit, they're going to choose profit over people. So I think that we have to be clear that the corporations have a legal responsibility to make profit. It's a legal responsibility. That's why in philosophy, I'm a philosophy professor. In philosophy, we teach business ethics very differently than we do Christian ethics or any other type of ethics. Because ethics have to consider legality. And so when the CEO has to make a decision about what cuts to make, who will bear the cost of certain decisions that they need to make profit, they're not held to the same ethical standards, say a priest or a person who's a public servant will be. You understand that? There's a distinction. So when you defer to corporations as your moral leaders and visionaries for what change looks like, you've also undermined your ability to have someone represent you and what's favorable for you. Just letting y'all understand this is how it works. So the best responsibility that we have as a people is to make sure that the people who suffer the way we suffer, who experience the world the way we experience the world, become our moral leaders. Because they're the ones that have compassion for us, because passion means to suffer with. If you don't understand my suffering and my pain, how can you know how to end my suffering and pain? So I am saying that when a person who's experiencing the impacts of water toxins, land toxins, air toxins, as a result of corporate profits and land distribution, wealth distribution, then they are the ones that better speak to how to end the polluting problem. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to begin to realize that corporations don't have to bear the full responsibility for their profit-making decisions. So we have to now bring to the table the people who bear the responsibility of those decisions negatively to be the ones to make the decisions about how we should move forward as it relates to change. I'm just saying that because I think we forget the people should be the deciding factor of what change looks like, not the policymakers if they don't represent the people, or the corporate leaders who don't represent the people. I'm just saying, that's to clear the air. Who represents you is the one who is most familiar with you, not the one who has appointed themselves to be your representative.
Just following what we just talked about on the other side of the room, and we talked about the carbon tax earlier as being a way to put a monetary value on those externalized costs. Would you have any points to make about what kinds of policies would help speed the transition away from the more toxic types of fuels? And because right now you can't. It's kind of a moral issue whether or not how fast you move to renewables, but what kind of policy would make it so it's done in the books in the accounting? This is what the most economical way to proceed is. Would you want to comment on that?
We have 2 minutes left in total.
Yeah, I would just say, as I mentioned earlier, we in Arkansas have met the requirements of the Clean Power Plan that was proposed that didn't pass. And the biggest driver in that was the reduced price of natural gas. Obviously, natural gas is a fossil fuel, but it's a fossil fuel with different and lesser emissions than coal. And natural gas is displacing coal. Renewables in the form of wind coming into Arkansas are displacing fossil fuels at times. And so I think that there are market forces in place that are bringing those to bear currently. And I'm not sure, I'm not prepared yet to advocate what other policy would be appropriate. There may be some other solutions coming forward, but I think that we're seeing that change happen, and I think we're going to continue to see that change happen. Economics of renewable projects are improving, and I think that'll continue. And then battery technology is improving, and I think that's probably the next thing that will make a leap from where we are to where we will be, is when battery technology is cost effective at large scale, because you've got to have that before you can displace fossil fuels beyond what we're doing at a real significant level.
If I want to speak to policy, I want to go back to Senate Bill 145. That's going to open up the ability for individuals to bring their own power to their house.
And municipalities.
And I think right now municipalities are being exempted, and you need to speak on that. That's my understanding, but I'm in favor of the original bill. To give people the ability to have their own power. Yes.
Let me speak to that, okay? We're owned by our citizens, okay? They are our public service commission. I think all of us already have net metering policies adopted. So it's not like we're trying to avoid it. What we're saying is let local control and local decisions take hold. And we'll be proactive. You know, when our customers and people who live within the city want it, we move in that direction. I mean, we're very similar to a co-op. You know, we listen to our citizens. So the reason why we're exempted from it is we're kind of already doing it anyway.
We're at time, and I hope we all have a little more appreciation for what these guys do in their work.
That was a good panel. I'm glad I heard that before we started talking about CCL. Oh, did I get in the way?
Yeah, no, you're not in the way. I'm done.